Hello and welcome to the Ultimate EV Buyer's Guide. What I hope will be a fairly comprehensive look at electric vehicle technology, range dynamics, charging infrastructure, and the economics of ownership. In this first part, I'd like to talk a little bit about the vehicle itself and the electric vehicle battery. So where it's come from, something about the range, the mechanical realities of EVs, and home charging, and the hidden benefits of ownership. It might surprise you to know that electric vehicles were actually quite common at the beginning of the 1900s. They were more popular than petrol cars at the day because they were quiet and clean, and you didn't need to hand crank them on a cold, frosty morning. Mind you, having a look at that one in the picture, the cold, frosty morning would still be there when you got inside it anyway. But the reason that we lost electric cars at that stage was because of cheap oil and because of entrepreneurs like Henry Ford, who began to supply readily available petrol-driven cars. So that's what ultimately sidelined electric. Plus, there was no infrastructure for electric in those days, and battery technology was very limited. So the range of a car would have been quite small. Modern electric vehicles really have come around since the late 1990s and are over the last 15 to 20 years have really come into the mainstream. But it was pioneers like Nissan and Renault with their Leaf and their Renault Zoe, and Tesla, of course, who led the way. And of course, we have legislation in the UK now that no new petrol or diesel cars will be sold after 2030. So I mentioned already talking about batteries and range, and this is probably one of the most talked about things about electric vehicles and about how far the car can manage and how often it needs to be charged. And it's quite simple calculation. So an EV's battery, the capacity is measured in kilowatt hours, and that replaces obviously the traditional fuel tank in the car. Standard models, sort of entry-level models, you might say, that have typically a 50 kilowatt hour battery. If the driver can achieve between 3.5 and 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour, if they're an efficient driver, the same as if you had a petrol or diesel car, if you can manage to meet the quoted miles per gallon figures for the car, that's the same way that you get 3.5 to 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour for an electric vehicle. You will find that it has a range of 210 to 240 miles. Manufacturers for all the latest electric vehicles quote what's called the WLTP, the Worldwide Harmonized Light Vehicle Test Procedure figure. So everybody uses the same statistics to produce their WLTP figure, but really your real world figure of range will probably be 10 to 15% less than the official WLTP figures. So what causes the real range to drop? One of the biggest factors is cold weather. Batteries just generally don't like cold weather. The battery chemical performance decreases, so therefore you'll get less range. And also, when you're in your car when it's cold, you'll need to have the heat turned on, and the heat is obviously, it doesn't come from an engine the way it does in a petrol or diesel car. The heat comes from an electric heater, and electric heaters, like similar to what you might have in your house, an electric bar, some of them take quite a lot of electricity to make them heat up, and that will reduce the range because your battery's not performing as well, and you're having to heat the vehicle as well. Some EVs are fitted with a heat pump, which is a much more efficient way of heating the vehicle, so it doesn't need to use the electric heater. But if you don't have a heat pump, then the combined energy drain obviously can reduce your range by maybe 20 to 30% compared to midsummer. Something else that you have on an EV that you don't really get in most normal petrol or diesel cars, except maybe very high-end ones is a preconditioning function, and preconditioning allows the driver to set the cabin temperature prior to driving off, usually through the app. This can be very, very useful in winter because you can set the temperature inside the car to be to 22 degrees, and that will defrost the windows for you. So when you come to get in to go, the cabin will be nice and warm, and you won't need to scrape the windows. The other thing that reduces real range is speed and, of course, drag because of that. So aerodynamic resistance increases exponentially with speed. So if you drive at 70 miles per hour, you're using significantly more energy per mile than you would if you drove at 60 miles an hour. Also, steep terrain, such as going up a side of a hill, or heavy payloads, such as towing a trailer, it will also reduce your effective range. Similarly, if you accelerate up a hill, you will use significantly more energy than if you just try to maintain a constant speed. So this all links back to the efficient driving technique. So you learn to drive your electric vehicle in a slightly different way to the way that you may have driven your petrol or diesel car. So one of the big benefits of having an electric vehicle is that it can be charged at home, and it's possibly one of the biggest benefits. There are several different options. You can have what's called a granny charger, which you can just plug into a standard plug in the house. It doesn't have a great deal of power output, so it will be very slow, and it'll take probably 24 hours to charge a car from almost empty to completely full. Now, to be fair, you don't necessarily do that all the time. You would only maybe top up your car, in which case it might be okay. But it comes into its own if you're traveling away from home, for example, on a holiday, and where you're staying, there's no public charger or wall box, and you can plug your car in just to an ordinary electrical socket, and they're available for around 150 to 200 pounds. More common is to get a dedicated wall box fitted. As you can see in the picture, it's professionally installed, has to be installed by an electrician. Typically it has 7.4 kilowatts output, and that will charge most EVs to full in a 6 to 9 hour period. Occasionally there are offers that you can get one free with your new car. Otherwise it's around £1,000, and that would be for a brand new box and with an electrician fitting it. Second-hand boxes are occasionally become available on your local ads, but and they can be got from £400 or £500, and then again the price of an electrician to fit it. Also, the big advantage of being able to charge at home are the smart EV tariffs. So this would be like economy 7 type of system, where you pay a slightly cheaper or quite a lot cheaper overnight rate and a slightly higher daytime rate. In the UK, some rates are as low as 7 pence per kilowatt hour, which means you can charge the car at home for a fraction of what you would be putting in to a petrol or diesel car. So what I like to talk about, the hidden benefits of an electric vehicle, is first of all the acceleration and the torque. So an EV, you get instant response. So electric motors deliver 100% of their available torque from zero. There's no need to rev the engine to find a power band. The moment you press the accelerator, the car will respond straight away, and you get smooth, linear, and very fast acceleration. This comes into its own when you're, for example, pulling out of a junction into join main traffic or onto a roundabout. Sometimes a petrol or diesel car will stall slightly as you accelerate away. You don't get that in an EV. Also, if you're overtaking another car, the response is instantaneous, and it makes overtaking other vehicles a much more safe operation. Petrol cars, then obviously the internal combustion engine has to build up the RPM, and there are gears required to reach peak torque and power. And you get a slight delay in that, even more so if it's a turbocharged car, and you don't get that in an EV. On the transmission, EVs are single speed largely. They don't have any gears, so therefore you don't need to change gear. You just accelerate, and it's completely uninterrupted. It'll accelerate right to its maximum speed without you having to do anything at all. A petrol car obviously has multi-gears, typically 6 speeds or sometimes 9 in an automatic gearbox, and they constantly shift to keep the engine in its optimum range. But even the best automatic gear shifts do not change gear as quickly as an EV, because there are no gears to change. So in the handling and weight distribution, again, a lesser known fact about EVs is they're heavier than petrol cars because of the battery pack, but that heavy battery is typically mounted along the floor, and that makes the car center of gravity very low. So when you're going around corners, the vehicle stays planted and very stable around corners. Petrol cars obviously are different. They have an engine and transmission at the front, maybe an axle at the back. They're not as heavy as an EV, but the lower overall mass often makes them feel more agile, nimble, and lightweight through tight consecutive bends. And if you want to click on the link on this slide, there's a real world example of how EV performance is much faster and better than traditional internal combustion engine performance.